I remember it was a Tuesday evening nearly 10 years ago when my phone lit up with a message that ended up changing everything for me. It was just past 9 o'clock p.m., and I was sprawled out on the couch, flipping through TV shows, when I got a notification from an unknown number. Instinctively, I grabbed my phone, feeling a little jolt of adrenaline when I saw who it was from. The message simply read, "Hi Jake, is this still your number? It's Jessica from Denver." A few years back, Jessica and I had gone out for about 6 months. At first, it was a ton of fun. She was stunning, smart, and successful. But she was also pretty intense, and I've always found passion attractive. Still, Jessica was unhealthily obsessed with self-improvement. Not the healing your past traumas kind, but the all about maximizing your potential type. While I agreed with some of her ideas about discipline and taking full ownership of your life, she sometimes took it way too far. I remember one particular incident vividly. We were on a date, both a little tipsy and freezing outside, and I handed a homeless guy a few coins, just enough for a hot drink or a snack. Jessica didn't say anything at first but went cold afterward, and when I asked what was wrong, she launched into a rant about how homeless people should help themselves, claiming I was stupid for giving him money because he'd probably spend it on booze or drugs. I just wanted to help, but she saw it as some kind of moral failing. That seemed to be the start of our breakup. Over the following weeks, with her working increasingly long hours, we gradually drifted apart. Eventually, Jessica was the one to end things. Honestly, I was upset for a few days but quickly realized I was better off without her. I deleted her number, moved on, and threw myself back into the dating scene when I felt ready. But the success didn't come, and it turned into an almost 8-month dry spell. When Jessica finally sent that message, I found myself staring at my phone screen, reading her words over and over, hesitation making me hover over the keyboard. Suddenly, I heard a voice in my head, not a literal voice, just my own quiet warning. "Don't do it," I told myself. "It's tempting, sure, but don't make the same mistake again." Jessica wasn't outright bad news. She'd always been a lot, and I'd feel like a real idiot if I fell for her trap again. But my love life had been dead in the water, and out of curiosity, I started drafting a reply. I went through it about 5 times, trying to keep it totally neutral. "Hey, good to hear from you. What's up?" I finally sent. Almost instantly, her response arrived. She wrote that she hadn't really given us a proper shot before because she'd been unready for a relationship, but that now she was. She said she thought about me a lot, admitted that those months with me had been among the best she'd had, and told me the offer was still on the table if I was interested. I read it several times, trying to make sure I wasn't just rushing into something I'd regret. I even checked my phone to confirm it was her original message. I couldn't quite believe it. It didn't seem like her at all. Jessica was always distant, work-focused, and just preoccupied. But this message was raw, honest, even a little vulnerable. It knocked me sideways. I'd already been thinking back on the great times we'd had. Maybe those first few months had been really special, and somehow her words made me want to try again. I mulled it over for a moment, then decided to keep things moving. We exchanged a few more messages, talking things out, and once I was convinced she was genuine, I suggested we go out again, a second first date, I called it. We set it for that Sunday night at this new Middle Eastern place I'd been dying to try, and since it was a Monday holiday, we could stay out late without worries. On the day, I arrived early, standing outside, hands in my pockets, watching the street. It was early May, so the weather was mild. I wasn't too cold in a shirt and jeans. I was happy to wait, but after about 10 minutes, I started thinking she might have changed her mind. I checked my phone, no texts, no missed calls, and felt a strange mix of relief and annoyance. Classic Jessica, I thought. No real effort, just big promises and no follow-through. Just as I was about to send her a message, I saw her rushing around the corner, heels clicking sharply against the pavement. Jessica looked incredible. Her hair was a sun-kissed blonde, swept back elegantly, and her dress hugged her figure like a glove. When we were together, she'd been slim, gym regular, and strong-looking, but now she looked like she'd turned her fitness obsession into real muscle, lean and sculpted. She apologized for being late, said her Pilates class ran over, then added with a smile, "You look really good." My face warmed, probably from her compliment and the way she looked, and I felt my cheeks flush. She gave me a little satisfied smile, and we headed into the restaurant. I couldn't help but feel like I'd hit the jackpot. Dinner was even better than I'd hoped, and although they might have served halal cuisine, their bar definitely wasn't. Our waiter, a friendly Iranian guy, gave us stellar service, and before long, we'd polished off 3 bottles of wine. Jessica was different too. She laughed more, she listened when I talked, and she asked genuine questions. Old Jessica would have been glued to her phone, trying to steer every conversation back to work or her self-improvement projects. That night she only brought up work once, then quickly stopped herself. It was refreshing. I liked this new side of her. We shared a few small plates, 2 mains, a dessert, and finished with another bottle of wine as the place started to empty. The bill was pretty steep, nearly £190 after tip, but with how fantastic everything was, I thought it was worth every penny. Jessica paused, pulling her bag, then said she had a confession. I smirked, joking, "Don't tell me you forgot your purse again." She didn't laugh, though. Instead, she told me it wasn't about that, it was something else. The mood suddenly shifted. I leaned back, waiting, and she took a deep breath before starting. She explained that since she'd decided to give dating another shot, she'd met guys online. One of them had seemed perfect, but after a few weeks he'd become jealous, controlling, and eventually she feared for her safety. She told me she'd broken things off with him months back, but he'd refused to leave her alone. Recently, he'd started hanging around outside her flat late at night, sometimes just standing across the street. It was only getting worse. She said she was scared. I was sorry for her, asked if she'd contacted the police, and she nodded. She had, but since the guy hadn't broken any laws yet, there wasn't much they could do. She hesitated, then asked if I'd come back to her place for a drink just to make sure he wasn't still outside. She looked genuinely shaken, and even though I'd had quite a bit of wine, my instinct called me to stay. It felt wrong to leave her alone like that, plus, I wasn't quite ready for the night to end. A few more drinks sounded like a perfect way to give her some comfort. I agreed, and her face relaxed into a relieved smile. We called a taxi, and after asking the waiter if we could wait inside, the driver pulled up a short while later a plain black minivan with tinted windows. He came out and told us it was the only available car, but he'd waive any extra charge for the bigger vehicle. As we got in and settled, I remember Jessica leaning into me, her arm brushing mine, and I let it happen. The night was warm, wine making everything soft, and I felt a familiar thrill. A good date was going well. That's when I heard it. A faint rustling sound from the seat behind me. I turned my head, but before I could see anything, something snapped tight around my neck, pulling so hard that it cut into my skin. My hands shot up, desperately trying to pry it off, lungs constricting, vision blurring into blackness. Everything went dark. I woke up coughing, my throat burned. My mouth was stuffed with a rag that smelled of oil and sweat. I couldn't open my eyes. A blindfold was tied so tightly that it pressed into my temples. My wrists and ankles were gagged with plastic zip ties that cut circulation. Panic hit like a punch. I thrashed, trying to scream through that gag. A deep, gravelly voice from behind me, I think it was Jessica, told me to stop fighting, that it'd hurt less if I just let it happen. That moment hit me like a brick, cold and sharp. As much as I tried to process what was happening, my mind wouldn't connect the dots. I realized in that instant, Jessica was behind this. I didn't want to surrender, but I knew I had no choice if I wanted to survive. I slumped back into the seat, breathing shallowly, listening. Every bump the van hit, every turn made me feel sicker. I tried to count the few minutes it could be taking, searching for clues about where I was or who had taken me. Fear clouded my thoughts, my hands numb from the tight ties, my throat sore from the gag. Jessica didn't say a word, just the hum of engine, distant traffic, and sometimes the sound of someone clearing their throat behind me. Then the van stopped. The door on my side slid open, and I felt two gloved hands grabbing me, dragging me out onto gravel that stabbed into my feet. I stumbled but was kept upright, the gravel giving way to grass. Twigs snapped under the weight as I was dragged deeper, the air thick with the scent of pine and damp earth, heavy with the smell of smoke. Time felt endless, maybe 10 or 15 minutes. Then we stopped. The grass beneath my feet, then silence. No breeze, no birds, just me, and the ragged sound of my breathing. Suddenly, they lifted me into the air. My stomach dropped as I was hoisted onto some kind of wooden platform that groaned under my weight. Then they tied me to a rough, splintered pole. Before I could process that, I felt cold steel slide across my chest, and I started screaming into the gag again, terrified they were going to cut into my heart. But then I heard fabric tearing as they sliced away my shirt, then my jeans, until I was fully exposed to the night air. The cold hit me like an icy slap. I heard the clatter of wood and the sound of objects being stacked on the ground below. Men grunted and strained as they worked. Then my gag was pulled out and the blindfold was removed. My eyes watered at the sudden brightness of the flaming torches, illuminating the clearing I'd been brought to. My knees buckled as I looked around. I was deep in the woods, surrounded by figures in hooded robes, their faces blank and featureless, like polished slates. Some held torches, flickering and crackling, casting jagged shadows amid the trees. The men who dragged me appeared to wear tactical gear, black uniforms, masks, holstered guns on their hips. One of them, holding a sizable jerry can, approached the pile of wood beneath me. With a grim expression, he poured gasoline all over the logs. The horrid chemical smell hit my nose as fumes filled the air. A second and then a third can followed, the gasoline soaking into the wood, making the stench worse. My voice cracked as I begged them to stop, gagging from the fumes. They kept pouring, paying no attention, focused solely on what they were doing. I pulled at the ropes, scraping my skin on the pole, but couldn't move. Suddenly, a figure stepped forward, tall, cloaked, face hidden behind that dark, strange mask decorated with pale symbols I didn't recognize. The figure raised a flaming torch, then turned to face the crowd and began speaking in a language I'd never heard before. Not French, Spanish, German, nothing familiar. I've watched plenty of horror movies and knew my languages, but this was something else entirely. The words were sharp, rhythmic, and the crowd responded with short barks, echoing through the forest. After the figure finished, they turned and raised the torch high, the flames dancing. The figure took a few steps back, then lowered the torch. The crowd fell silent. The figure turned, faced me, and started walking toward me with that torch. The chanting grew louder, the flames drawing nearer. I struggled against the ropes, feeling them cutting into my wrists. The heat from the torch brushed against my skin. I screamed, the primal sound of terror. As the flames neared, I feared I'd burst into fire, that my skin would blister and blacken. But just as the torch started to tip toward the gasoline, the figure raised it back into the air, and the crowd hushed. They stepped back, the figure lowered the torch, and then stomped out the flames with a heavy boot. Embers hissed and died. I was frozen, trembling, mind reeling. I thought I might breathe a sigh of relief, but maybe I'd only delayed the fire. Before I knew it, a member of the tactical team had climbed onto the platform, cut the ropes that tethered me, and pulled back my blindfold. My arms felt useless, numb from terror, and then I was dragged away, stumbling on the uneven ground. I had barely moved for 5 minutes before I heard another van door open. They roughly tied my wrists and ankles again and threw me inside. The door slammed shut, and the vehicle pulled away. I curled up, shivering, convinced I was going to die. But the vehicle stopped surprisingly fast. They cut my restraints, dragged me out onto a remote dirt road. I hit the ground, knees scraped and bleeding, and then I watched the van drive off into the night. I was alone, deep in nowhere, no houses, no cars, just empty fields. My wrists still zip-tied, and I was still completely naked, but I could walk. Every joint protested as I got to my feet, the cold wind slicing through me. I took step after step, praying I wouldn't freeze to death before finding help. My feet were raw, bloodied from the rocks beneath them, but I kept moving. Finally, I saw a small cottage a little way off, a quaint little house with a thatched roof, like something from a postcard. Completely stark, I staggered up the path, stark naked, and pounded on the door with trembling fists. A middle-aged woman opened in a bathrobe, and her eyes immediately widened in horror. She started screaming loudly like she'd seen a ghost. Her husband rushed out with a baseball bat, ready to fight, but stopped cold when he saw the ropes on my wrists. I'll never forget the look on his face, wide-eyed, stunned. He muttered Jesus Christ and ran back inside to get something to help me. They brought a blanket, made me some tea, and let me shower hot water burning my raw skin. I stood there shaking, blood and dirt swirling down the drain, wincing from the pain with every step. Just before the police arrived, they gave me some old clothes, sweatpants, and a faded t-shirt that meant the world to me. I sat in their kitchen, trembling while they whispered in the background. When the officer finally showed up, I told him everything, from the dinner to the forest to the hooded figures. He took notes and asked in a flat tone, "How much had you been drinking?" I told him, 3 bottles split between me and my friends. I was drunk, yeah, but not blackout drunk. I remember everything. He didn't deny it, but clearly doubted my story. They tracked down Jessica and the taxi driver, but their accounts didn't match. The driver claimed I was so intoxicated I had demanded to stop so I could vomit, then simply wandered off into a field and disappeared. They showed him a receipt with a timestamp from the restaurant, but Jessica's phone went dead after that. No answers, no trace. The police seemed to give up shortly after, claiming there wasn't enough evidence or anyone to connect to her. Until I remembered her address or where I'd been taken, there was nothing they could do. My injuries healed, but the nightmares didn't stop. I tried investigating what had happened, poured myself into researching Wiccan rituals and occult practices, looking for any clues. Most of the stuff I found was just superstition, nothing like the mass or language I'd heard. I even posted on conspiracy forums. Some people believed me, others called me crazy, and one user even accused me of being a plant. Eventually, I gave up trying to find meaning. Circling back to the Heal Your Trauma types of self-help books and online courses. No matter what I did, the ghost of that torch haunted me every night. I'd feel the heat, hear the chants, and I've avoided dating altogether. Trust issues bled into every part of my life. I'd find myself talking to someone new and suddenly wonder, was it you? Were you there? Or I'd think about the person with the torch who, for whatever reason, chose not to set me ablaze. Sometimes, I feel like I owe them my life. They're the only friend I've ever had, and I swing wildly between gratitude and rage. I met a guy named Ryan on a dating app. Seemed perfect at first. His profile showed him leaning against a motorcycle in a leather jacket, smiling that charming grin that made my heart skip. We matched, and within a day he messaged, "Hey, you seem cool. Coffee sometime." I was 24, working in marketing, tired of flaky guys, and Ryan felt different. Our first date was at a little cafe downtown. He showed up on time, ordered a black coffee, asked about my life, my job, my family, my dog Milo. He listened, really listened. Told me he was a mechanic who loved fixing things, that his sister was close, and by the end of the night he walked me to my car, kissed me softly, then headed home. For the first few months, everything was perfect. He texted good morning, brought me takeout when I worked late, surprised me with music playlists and little gifts. We'd spend weekends sprawled out on my couch or walking along the coast, holding hands, the grip firm but warm. Every part of me thought, this is what it's supposed to feel like. But around month 6, small stuff started creeping in. He'd ask questions about my plans, if I was seeing anyone else, innocent sounding, but his eyes showed suspicion. Then unannounced visits to my favorite spots, which I always found a little creepy. At a bar with friends, I'd look up and see him watching from the door, smiling that familiar smile, but it wasn't the same. Cold, possessive, wrong. By month 8, that possessiveness had turned dark. We'd argue over trivial things like me not replying fast enough, and his voice would drop tight like he was holding back anger. One night, I asked for space after he blew up over me going to dinner with a male coworker. He grabbed my wrist not hard enough to bruise but enough to freeze me and hissed, "You don't get to walk away from me." I yanked free and locked myself in the bathroom until he left. The next day, he sent flowers and a message saying, "I'm sorry, I love you too much." I knew he was lying. The gut feeling was screaming at me. I finally ended things after 9 months and the whole scene was intense. I told him, "This isn't working, I'm done." His face turned blank like a switch had flipped, then he laughed, saying, "You don't mean that," and he left without another word. That was the beginning of the nightmare. He kept texting, "I miss you, you're making a mistake, we're not over." I blocked him, but he always found a new number or left notes on my car, like "Talk to me," scrawled in jagged handwriting. Once I came home to a single rose on my doorstep, petals crushed, probably squeezed too hard. I double-checked my locks, but I still caught glimpses of him watching me, often across the street from work, hanging around my gym, parked at the park, always distant, always observing. I told him to leave me alone, but he'd just smile and walk away. Even my coworkers noticed I was shutting down. My boss pulled me aside one day, worried, but I lied that I was fine. The truth was, I stopped going out much, parked closer to my building, kept a key between my fingers when I walked to my car, and slept with a baseball bat by my bed. The threats got worse, calls from blocked numbers, his voice low and menacing. "You think you can just toss me aside? You'll regret this," he'd say. I'd hang up, but those words carved into my brain haunted me. I went to the police, handed over reports, but they said there wasn't enough proof of immediate danger. They offered a restraining order, but I knew Ryan wouldn't care. I bought pepper spray, kept a bat nearby, told my mom everything. She, a retired nurse, begged me to stay with her, but I refused. I told her I wouldn't let him chase me out of my life. I kept going about my days, trying to ignore him, until one Tuesday afternoon, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I answered, thinking it was a client. Instead, Ryan's voice was cold, calculated. "Killing you wouldn't be enough. You need to hurt like you made me hurt, so I'm going to take something from you now." Then the line went dead. I froze. Fear hit me harder than anything before. I grabbed my bag, ran to my car, and called my mom. "Lock the doors, don't let anyone in, I'm coming." Her voice trembled with concern. I told her I couldn't explain, just stay safe. The drive was a blur. I gripped the wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white, glancing nervously in the rearview mirror, terrified I'd see him behind me. When I reached her street, there he was. His truck, a dinged black auction vehicle, parked right by her house. I slammed the gas, pulled in behind him, then bolted out, pounding on her door. It swung open, and I saw my mom inside, calm as ever. Before I could say a word, I pushed past her, shoulders knocking her aside. Inside, Ryan sat at her kitchen table, looking completely at ease, like he owned the place. My stomach lurched. My mom tried to say he was a friend, but I yelled, "Get out." I was fighting to keep my voice steady. Ryan got up slowly, raising his hands as if innocent, and said he just needed to make a call. As he grabbed his jacket, he looked back at me and winked. In that moment, I knew he could have done whatever he wanted. He'd been inside my head all along. I locked the door behind him, trembling, then told my mom everything. She insisted I stay over, but I said I needed space, that I had to face this on my own. I drove home, checking every window, every door, holding a bat tight in my lap through the night, just waiting for it to be over. It didn't stop. The calls kept coming, voicemails full of threats and apologies. I'd find his truck and notes, seemingly warnings left outside. One day, I found a single red rose on my porch, petals crushed flat like he'd squeezed it too hard. I reported everything, kept the restraining order active, but it was like shouting into the void. He was always one step ahead, just out of reach. Then suddenly, one day, the stalking stopped. No calls, no notes, no sightings. I waited for the other shoe to drop, but weeks went by, then a month with nothing. And finally, I felt safe enough to breathe again. I was at work on a quiet afternoon, scrolling through my phone during a break, when I saw a photo posted by a mutual friend. Ryan, arms around a girl I didn't recognize, smiling at some bar. She looked happy, oblivious. She reminded me of me. My stomach sank. I stared at her face, then at Ryan's smile, and suddenly I felt sick all over again. I knew what he was capable of, how he could slip beneath the surface and do horrible things. I wanted to warn her, but how? If she didn't know me, he'd never believe it was me. So I made a new fake Facebook no-profile picture, a random name, and looked her up. Her page was open selfies, posts about her job at a daycare. I typed a quick message: "Be careful with Ryan. He's not who he seems. Get out while you can." I hit send, saw her page marked as read, then logged out and deleted that account forever. I don't know if she saw it, if she ever listened. Part of me still wants to check, to see if she's all right, but I stopped myself. For now, I'm free of him. That's enough. I still double-check my door locks, glance over my shoulder when I walk to my car, because I know he's out there and I know he doesn't forget. Sometimes I think about her, Elizabeth, and her story, how my great-grandmother carved a life for herself against impossible odds. She was just 22 in 1899, living outside Chattanooga, Tennessee, a small house, a garden, and a future full of hope. One summer, everything changed when her husband, Henry Higgins, was crushed by a collapsing timber at the mill. He survived but changed forever, meaner, more paranoid, violent. She endured beatings, thefts, and threats, forced to run away and hide just to stay alive. She finally found safety in North Carolina, met a kind preacher named Benjamin who helped her heal, and finally, at last, they built a new life, a quiet, hard-won happiness. Her courage, her resilience, it's what keeps her story alive in me. I wonder sometimes where she found the strength to keep going. Maybe it was love, or maybe stubbornness. Either way, that's why I'm here, typing this out, trying to keep her memory, her story alive for another generation. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this, hit that notification bell. I upload new stories every Monday and Thursday, and we have live streams on Sundays and Wednesdays. If you have a story to share, email me at letsreadsubmissions@gmail.com. You might see your story featured in the next video. Want to support me more? Join my Patreon for early access and bonus content, or click that join button on the channel for extra perks. And don't forget, you can listen to all these stories on the Let's Read podcast, links in the description. Thanks again, friends. And remember, salami is a terrible source of protein.